All right, so are you thinking about picking up Kristin Hannah's The Women?
Hmm.
Well, we are diving into this stack of reviews to help you figure out if it's the right book for you or not.
I think that is an excellent idea.
Yeah, we've got a mix of professional reviews and reader reactions.
Sounds good.
And let me tell you, opinions are all over the place.
Oh, really?
Some are calling it the best book of the year, and others, well, let's just say they weren't as enthusiastic.
Interesting. So Kristin Hannah is known for writing these really emotionally intense stories,
Yeah,
and The Women seems to be no exception to that.
right.
A lot of the reviews are praising her ability to just evoke these deep emotions from readers.
Yeah, I saw a ton of 5-star reviews on Goodreads.
Wow.
One
Yeah.
reader even called it divine.
Oh, wow.
People seem to be really connecting with her writing style
Mm.
and the powerful themes that she's tackling in this book.
Yeah. And that being said, even the really positive reviews mention that this book is heavy on heartbreak and tragedy.
Hmm.
One reviewer even admitted to crying for the last 10 pages straight.
Oh my gosh.
So the question is it a moving story that will stay with you, or is it just potentially too much?
Right.
It really depends on what you're looking for as a reader.
So what's the story actually about?
Well, it follows Frankie, a
Ah.
young nurse who enlists in the Army Nurse Corps and serves in Vietnam.
Interesting.
And the book covers both her experiences during the war and then the challenges that she faces when she gets back home to a changed America.
Now that brings up an important point for anyone listening who's considering reading this book.
Yeah.
What kind of reading experience are you looking for?
Yeah.
Are you looking for a lighthearted escape, or are you ready to kind of delve into some difficult but really important topics?
Exactly.
Because The Women explores the really complex PTSD,
Mhm.
especially for female veterans,
Yeah.
which is a perspective that often gets overlooked in Vietnam War stories.
Absolutely.
One reviewer even mentioned a Forrest Gump effect, where Frankie seems to be present at every major historical event
Oh, wow.
of the era,
Okay.
which I thought was kind of funny.
Yeah.
But it also, I think, points to the ambition of the book.
Right.
Hannah's clearly trying to capture the scope of the war and its impact on those who served, and just all of the social and political changes happening back home.
And that's where some of the criticism comes in.
Okay.
So while Hannah's praised for tackling these really weighty themes, some readers felt that she didn't quite hit the mark in certain areas.
Like what?
Well, for example, a few reviewers thought that Frankie fell in love with every man she met,
Oh, really?
which made her feel a little too perfect and unrealistic.
Interesting.
Almost like a Mary Sue character,
Yeah.
which is a term used to describe a character that's seemingly flawless and loved by everyone.
Yeah, I've heard that term.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's important to remember, though, that every reader brings their own preferences to the book.
Right?
So some people might find a character like that relatable or aspirational,
True.
while others might find it unrealistic and frustrating.
True. But beyond the romance aspect, some readers found the plot to be predictable and even a bit cheesy. One reviewer even used the term trauma porn
Wow.
to describe the book,
Okay.
suggesting that Hannah might be exploiting these traumatic experiences just for shock value.
Yeah, this raises an interesting point about the balance between historical accuracy and fictional storytelling.
Right.
You know, Hannah's trying to portray the horrors of war and the aftermath, but some readers felt she went too far, sacrificing nuance for melodrama.
Yeah, I can see that.
And this ties into another critique that I saw pop up quite a bit.
Okay.
The book's focus on Frankie's romantic relationships.
Hmm.
So despite the title being The Women, some readers felt that the female friendships and the bonds were really underdeveloped,
Interesting.
especially when compared to the romantic storylines.
Yeah, I saw a few reviews that kind of pointed that out.
Yeah,
They felt like the title promised a deeper exploration of those female relationships,
right.
and they were a bit disappointed that it wasn't as central to the story as they hoped.
Yeah, I can see that.
But before we jump to conclusions,
Sure.
let's take a step back and look at the historical context here.
Okay.
I mean, Hannah chose to set this story during the Vietnam War,
Right.
a conflict that we've seen explored before in books and movies,
Yeah,
but often from the male perspective.
exactly.
And even when women are included in these Vietnam War narratives, they're often relegated to these supporting roles.
Yeah,
You know, think of the classic donut dolly image.
right.
Women providing comfort and care, but not necessarily on the front lines.
Exactly.
So by centering the women on these female nurses working in a triage hospital,
Okay,
Hannah's bringing a fresh perspective to a familiar story.
I see.
She's highlighting the experiences of women who served in this capacity that's often overlooked.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things that's drawing readers to this book.
Yeah.
But it also raises the question of how accurate her portrayal of the Vietnam War and the challenges these women faced actually is.
That's a crucial point for sure.
Yeah.
It's always important to be critical of historical fiction, especially when you're dealing with a conflict as sensitive as the Vietnam War.
Absolutely.
Some reviewers did call out historical inaccuracies and even raised concerns about a potential white savior narrative.
Interesting. What's that?
Well, it's a trope where a white character is positioned as the hero, saving people of color from their own circumstances,
Right.
often overlooking the complexities of the situation.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah.
So Hannah does address this in her author's note at the beginning of the book,
Okay.
acknowledging that she took some creative liberties with place names and unit details for the sake of storytelling. But she also stresses that she did extensive research,
Right.
including interviews with actual female Vietnam War veterans.
Wow.
It's a tricky balance to strike, though,
It is.
honoring the truth while creating a compelling story.
Yeah, and that's where opinions really diverge.
Okay.
Some reviewers, including those who actually lived through that era, felt that Hannah captured the reality of the war and how women were treated back then. They praised her descriptions of the brutality and the fear and the emotional toll that it took.
Right.
And there's even a mention of the prevalence of sexual assault on military bases,
Wow.
which is a topic that's often ignored in war narratives.
It's interesting you bring that up
Yeah.
because one reviewer specifically commended Hannah for initially pushing back on changing certain factual details
Okay.
to make the writing process easier. They felt like this demonstrated her commitment to accurately representing that time period.
Yeah, it speaks to the responsibility that authors of historical fiction have to both the story that they're telling and the people who lived through those events.
Right. However, other reviewers felt like Hannah relied on stereotypical imagery of Vietnam,
Interesting.
pointing out details like Vietnamese women always being portrayed in traditional clothing, even in situations where it wouldn't have been practical. Yeah.
This raises the important question of representation.
Yeah.
And whose voices are being prioritized. While Hannah's story focuses on American women,
Yeah.
some readers wished she had delved deeper into the Vietnamese perspective and just the complexities of the conflict beyond just the American experience.
One reviewer even pointed out that there wasn't a single Vietnamese character who played a significant role in the story.
Really?
And they felt that was a missed opportunity to explore the war from multiple angles
Yeah.
and provide a more nuanced understanding of the conflict.
And that's a valid point.
Yeah.
It's something to keep in mind as you consider whether this book is right for you.
Right.
Are you looking for a meticulously researched historical account?
Mm.
Or are you open to a fictionalized interpretation that focuses on a specific perspective, even if it means sacrificing some historical breadth?
It sounds like there's a lot to unpack there, both in terms of historical accuracy and the representation of different perspectives.
Yeah.
But even if The Women isn't this perfect historical document, it seems like it still tackles some important issues that are still relevant today.
Oh, absolutely.
Like the challenges that veterans face when they return home
Right.
and how society treats those who served, especially women.
Absolutely. And one of the most powerful aspects of the book, I think, is its exploration of PTSD,
Yeah.
particularly in female veterans. Hannah really delves into the psychological impact of war, the struggle to reintegrate into civilian life, and just the often invisible wounds of trauma.
Right.
And this resonated with a lot of the reviewers,
Yeah.
some even praising Hannah's depiction of PTSD as being more realistic than other portrayals they'd encountered.
I remember one reviewer mentioning how the book really captured that numbness and emotional shutdown that many veterans experience,
Right.
as opposed to just focusing on the more dramatic and outward expressions of PTSD.
Exactly. Hannah doesn't shy away from those less talked about aspects of trauma. But of course, there were also some dissenting opinions about how PTSD was portrayed.
Like what?
Well, some reviewers felt that the book kind of conflated PTSD with relationship trauma, particularly with Frankie's breakdowns often being linked to romantic turmoil rather than her wartime experiences.
Which brings us back to the element of romance in the book.
Right.
While some readers found it heartwarming, others felt that it was a bit over the top and detracted from the book's more serious themes.
Yeah.
The romance aspect seems to be like the most divisive element. Some reviewers called it insta-love,
Oh, really?
while others felt like it was just way too dramatic, bordering on like soap opera territory.
It definitely seems like Hannah leans into some of those classic romance tropes.
Yeah.
You know, the brooding bad boy, forbidden love, dramatic reunions. And
Right.
for some readers, that totally worked.
Yeah.
They enjoyed the emotional roller coaster
Sure.
and found the love stories to be a satisfying counterpoint to the heavier parts about the war.
But for others, it felt cliche and distracting.
Right.
They argued that the romance overshadowed the more nuanced exploration of female friendships
Yeah.
and the complexities of war that they were hoping for.
It's a tricky balance, isn't it?
It is.
Acknowledging the human need for connection, even amidst trauma, is important.
Yeah.
But the question is, did Hannah execute it in a way that felt authentic and served the larger story?
Right. And based on these reviews, it seems like the answer to that question really depends on you as a reader.
Yeah.
If you enjoy Hannah's signature blend of historical fiction and romance, you might find this book really engaging.
Okay.
But if you're looking for a more grounded and realistic portrayal of war and its impact, the romantic elements might feel a bit overdone.
Exactly. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from these reviews.
Okay.
Knowing what you're looking for in a book is key.
Yeah.
Are you hoping for a historical deep dive? A nuanced exploration of trauma?
Right.
A heartwarming romance?
Sure.
Or a little bit of everything?
Yeah.
The Women attempts to deliver on all of those fronts.
Right.
But it seems like some aspects resonate more strongly with readers than others.
So if you're thinking about picking up The Women, think about what kind of reading experience you're in the mood for.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Are you ready for a tearjerker? Are you looking for something thought-provoking?
Right.
An exploration of historical events and their lasting impact?
Okay.
Are you drawn to stories about strong women overcoming adversity?
Yeah.
Or maybe you're just looking for a captivating story with a good dose of romance?
The Women offers all of that and more.
It does.
But being aware of its strengths and weaknesses, especially when it comes to historical accuracy and the balance between romance and the other themes, will help you decide if it's the right book for you right now.
Exactly. And that's what we're here for, to help you make informed decisions about your reading list.
Absolutely.
So to wrap things up, let's leave you with this thought-provoking question.
Okay.
If you were in Frankie's shoes facing a society that didn't quite understand your experiences, how would you rebuild your life and find healing?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
This question really encourages you to think about those deeper themes that the book explores.
Like resilience and the search for belonging and the long-lasting effects of trauma.
Yeah.
It invites you to connect Frankie's story to your own life and consider how you might navigate similar challenges.
Because at the end of the day, that's what makes a book truly impactful.
It is.
Its ability to stay with you long after you've turned that last page.
So there you have it.
Yeah.
Our deep dive into Kristin Hannah's The Women.
We explored the good, the bad, and the complicated.
We did.
Giving you a really comprehensive look at what this book has to offer.
And now the decision is yours.
It is.
To read or not to read.
We hope this deep dive has equipped you to answer that question